Hello and welcome to episode 115 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On the show today, my co-host Sarah Says returns to talk about what might be my favorite thing in all of Walt Disney World, Epcot's World Showcase. It's also great to have Sarah back on the show more consistently. At the beginning of the year, she had a lot of family stuff to handle, but I think we're back on a regular schedule, so she will be on a lot more in the coming months. Marissa from Chicago, my other regular co-host, has also been quite busy lately. It shows how much our listeners have grown to connect with all of us, that people are reaching out to me when someone isn't on the show for a few episodes. Listen, sometimes people get busy. Sarah Says and Marissa were the first two people I asked to help when I started this podcast over 2 years ago, and they will be on the podcast until the day they decide they don't want to do it anymore. They both have open invitations. We have a lot to discuss on this topic, so let's welcome Sarah Says. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be back.
I'm really excited about doing this episode because it is my passion at Walt Disney World. It is my favorite thing to do in all of Walt Disney World, and that is walk around World Showcase. I think I am at Epcot so much at this point that I think you can actually send me mail there. I think it's my second address. When I show up and scan my Magic Band and give my fingerprint, then they hand me all the resident flyers. I'm there all the time. I love Epcot and specifically World Showcase. And I thought it would be fun if Sarah and I did a deep dive into World Showcase where we talk about all the pavilions, we discuss some of the history of it, and then maybe at the end we'll do a little armchair Imagineering, we'll do a little wishful thinking about what possibly could be happening in the future. We're going to have a lot of fun on this one.
I'm excited. I love Epcot, so this is going to be a good one.
So obviously the first place to start when it comes to World Showcase at Epcot is, how do you start? It will never fully be answered. It will start more fights than Coke or Pepsi. It'll start more fights than Oasis or Blur. This is what the East Coast, West Coast rap battle was in the 90s. Canada or Mexico is the fight that you will have now when you're talking to Walt Disney World fans. Where do you usually start, Sarah?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It depends. What are we doing when we're at Epcot? Because I start a different way depending on what we're doing. So if we're just going and we're hanging out in the World Showcase, we go towards Mexico. If we're going and we're going to go have a drink, we start in Canada, which I am on the very unpopular side for that. But I also know if I start in Mexico, I'm not going to make it to the American Adventure. So
that's interesting because most of the people who do start in Mexico say they do it because of drinking around the world or getting that margarita at the Mexico Pavilion. I am a person who always starts in Canada, and I have very specific reasons why. That side of World Showcase has more that I want to make sure I accomplish in my day than the other side.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Obviously, if you're doing Frozen Ever After, that completely changes your decision-making process for the day. You're maybe rope dropping Frozen Ever After, and then you'll start on that side. If I'm not doing that, and usually I'm only doing that if my wife Courtney wants to do it, I'm starting in Canada. So that's how we're going to start our episode today. We are going to start in the Canada Pavilion. And you have not had the chance to see the new movie, Canada Far and Wide. You were there when it was still Oh Canada with Martin Short, which, first of all, we can just talk about that for a minute because it was actually hilarious. I'm a little upset that it's not there anymore.
No, I agree. When I heard they were getting rid of it, I was like, oh, that's really sad. Like, come on. Martin Short's a national treasure in Canada. But it was a good one. Oh, Canada is a good one.
So Canada Far and Wide does one thing that these World Showcase pavilion movies should do, and that's make you want to visit Canada. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I want to go to Newfoundland, or I really want to go to Montreal someday. Like, I like it in that respect, but it's not as funny. It doesn't give me those same emotions. And there's one thing about Canada Far and Wide that drives me up the wall. And that is that they made a reference to the 2019 NBA champion Toronto Raptors, which is a reference that is going to age like milk. Like, why are you talking about it? Just so happened that the Raptors won the NBA championship while they were making this video. But why would you make that reference? Because it's so silly. It's already out of date, and the video hasn't been showing for all that long.
That's true. I haven't seen it, so I have no idea, but wow.
So other than the video, and we didn't mention this at the top, but we're not going to talk a whole bunch about restaurants. That'll be a future episode. We're actually going to talk about the things to do inside these pavilions. There are the beautiful British Columbia Gardens, which is pretty close to you.
I am. I'm pretty close to Victoria. I'm very close to Victoria. And I am a little bit further, but really close to Vancouver as well. And there is some beautiful gardens that I can go see in a much shorter trip than it takes me to get to Epcot.
That's true. I imagine you probably don't spend too much time looking at them. And then, of course, there is the waterfall in the back of this pavilion. A lot of people don't know about it because if you go and see the movie, you actually might sort of skip it. Like, you might see it out of the corner of your eye, but you enter and then the theater is sort of behind the waterfall. But this is an impressive waterfall, and every once in a while, especially on a hot day, I'll go back on that path and just sort of check out the waterfall, let the breeze hit the water and kind of cool me down a little bit.
Totally.
And then besides the waterfall and the gardens and the movie, basically Canada just becomes shopping. And there are some fun shops there that have, you know, Mickey wearing lumberjack outfits and Mickey hockey jerseys and stuff like that. So it is fun to look through that store. To the side, as you continue to walk towards the United Kingdom, there is a stage and they have a band that performs, and sometimes they'll do, I don't know if it's traditional Canadian music, but sometimes they'll do things that sound more traditional. And then sometimes the musicians there will do like Shania Twain. And the one time they were doing Neil Young, like I was walking through World Showcase and they were playing Keep on Rockin' in the Free World. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So sometimes you will get to see musicians performing on that side stage. And I think that is technically part of the Canada Pavilion. But this isn't the most filled out pavilion in World Showcase. However, when we move next to Canada, that's when we get to a pretty big pavilion that has a lot to experience, even though it doesn't have a ride, although it almost had a ride. And we'll definitely talk about that in a minute or two. But that is the UK pavilion. So what are your thoughts on the UK pavilion, Sarah? What are some of your favorite things to do? Do you spend a lot of time in this one?
I do really like the UK pavilion. I like to just walk around because to me it's reminiscent of when I got to spend some time in the UK, and I love the UK. But I don't really, because there isn't attractive, I don't spend a ton of time there. It's been kind of fun to see like when Alice is out and like different character greets. I do, however, love the really kitschy like shop that's there that has all the stuff from the UK, and you can buy tea and you can buy things that, I mean, she's not around anymore, but like with the Queen on it and things like that. But I liked it more for the food when we went, and we spent more time there getting lunch. But it is fun to walk around. I do really like the UK pavilion.
You know, I wonder, because this isn't really put on by the UK government, I wonder if because the Queen is so much more popular than Charles, if there's still a whole bunch of the Queen's stuff all throughout the pavilion. Like, I wouldn't see why not. Like, this isn't like the pound where you have to change who's on it when the Queen passes. I bet you there still is a bunch of stuff with the Queen. And now I can't wait until, like I need another excuse to go to Epcot. That is going to be something that I am going to check the next time I am there.
Give us an update.
So you did briefly mention meet and greets. You talked about the Alice meet and greet. There are two really cool meet and greets in the UK pavilion. You have Alice and you have Mary Poppins. Those are two of the most popular Disney characters, and you can meet them basically rotating back and forth in the UK pavilion.
That's really cool. I didn't realize, probably because I've never seen her there, but it completely makes sense that Mary Poppins would be meeting there, because anytime I've ever gone and seen a meet and greet, it's always been Alice.
Traditionally, Alice is by the walkway in World Showcase, and Mary Poppins is back in the courtyard. So if you don't go back to the courtyard, you might not end up seeing her.
That makes sense, because we didn't as frequently go back that far, but we got to the red telephone box and we stopped.
It used to be that there was a Winnie the Pooh meet and greet. You could meet Winnie the Pooh in Christopher Robin's bedroom.
Oh,
and that was in the UK pavilion. Now, Winnie the Pooh has sort of, I don't know if they've ever made this official, that this is his new location, but Winnie the Pooh kind of hangs out over by the Imagination Pavilion and chases butterflies on a hill and poses. So it's not as much of the line up, get your picture taken next to Winnie the Pooh style meet and greets. It's more of an interaction where you watch Winnie the Pooh be fun, because Winnie the Pooh is fun.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, when I was thinking Journey into, why would it be over there? Pooh is British, but but you know what? It makes more sense because all the pictures and videos I've seen, it's adorable. And if I were a child, I would just be freaking out if I saw Winnie the Pooh running around trying to catch butterflies.
And back in that courtyard area, there's a stage. They will have a rock band that will play British cover songs. That usually is happening later in the night. That's how I know I'm starting to get the drinking around the world crowd, is when I'm walking past the UK and I start to hear "You Really Got Me" coming from the back of the UK pavilion. I'm like, oh, people are going to start being a little inebriated now, so I got to watch out for that.
Those that started in Mexico.
Those that started in Mexico are not feeling great at that point. That is for sure. But it is cool that they have this band. They'll play Beatles, Rolling Stones.
That's awesome.
The Clash, I've even heard. They will do some stuff that is actual rock and roll from England. So I know one criticism that people have of the UK pavilion is that it is basically just the England pavilion. And I get that. There's not a lot going on with the other parts of the UK. I know that with Maribel's meet and greet coming to Magic Kingdom, Maribel from Encanto, that is replacing the Merida meet and greet. And there has been some talk will Merida now meet at the UK pavilion? But I don't know if she fits in the UK pavilion because there is very little Scottish representation in the UK pavilion. It does kind of stick to that England motif.
When you're talking about how it's kind of a weird pavilion, it is too, because it's split, where one half of it, kind of like Mexico, which, I mean, we'll get to later. One half is on the one side of the roadway area, and then the other half is up by the water. So you have a very split pavilion.
And of course, on the other side of that walkway is Rosencrown. And this is a restaurant a little bit, but for the most part, this is a bar. This is a pub. So we're going to talk about it, even though we're not talking a lot about restaurants. And Rosencrown is awesome. I don't think anybody who drinks around the world is going to say anything bad about the Rosencrown, but even just for the atmosphere, it is definitely a Disney-fied version of an English pub, of a British pub, but it does have that vibe. It makes you feel like you are in a British pub, even though you are well aware that you are still in Disney. I love the Rosencrown, and I don't drink alcohol. So that just goes to show how they nailed the theming on this one to a T.
Yeah, I do. I love the Rosencrown as well. I'm not going to lie, though. I love the Yorkshire County fish shop that's like attached to it on the outside. The last time we were there, I remember that was like one of our last meals we had when we were at Epcot because I just love fish and chips and they serve them traditionally to like what you have in the UK, but Disneyfied, of course.
And speaking of fish and chips, I've talked about this a few times. So if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, they actually have a vegan fish and chip in the Rosencrown.
Oh.
They don't advertise it a lot, but if you ask for it, you can get a vegan fish and chip, and it is really, really good.
That's interesting. I've never heard of a vegan fish and chip.
And now we're going to have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the Mary Poppins attraction we were going to get, but now it looks like we're not getting it, at least for a long time. They announced this a while ago at D23 that there was going to be a Mary Poppins attraction added to the UK pavilion. And just recently they said this was going to be basically Mad Hatter's Tea Party at Magic Kingdom, only indoors and themed towards Mary Poppins Returns. I don't think they said it was themed towards Mary Poppins Returns, but the concept art definitely made it look like it was themed towards Mary Poppins Returns. And I know that this had a lot of people thankful that they are not bringing that Mary Poppins attraction to the UK because they didn't want it to be this Mad Hatter's Tea Party style attraction. They wanted something a little better. I don't really care what attraction ended up going into the back of the UK pavilion themed towards Mary Poppins. What I wanted was Cherry Tree Lane. They were going to recreate Cherry Tree Lane back there, and I thought that would have been fantastic. Plus, I am all for adding rides to World Showcase that don't have hour-long waits.
People were speculating, about this teacup ride. It would be inside. And somebody said that it needed to be the Royal Doulton Bowl, the one that breaks in the Mary Poppins Returns movie. And so like all day today in my head, I've been like humming that song and like just imagining those bowls like spinning around inside.
It really looks from the concept art that people shared that was what they were going to try to make, the Royal Doulton Bowl, which I loved Mary Poppins Returns. I know that we're going to have an episode where we just listen to Marissa complain about it for a half of an hour because she does not like Mary Poppins Returns.
That movie was great. What is it? Something's wrong with Marissa.
However, I don't know if Mary Poppins Returns sort of has the staying power to need a ride, but I do really wish that they had more rides that were just quick little dark rides. We'll talk about Grand Fiesta Tour with the Three Caballeros a little later. Something like that where you don't have to wait an hour for it. And if we could have a few more of those sprinkled throughout World Showcase to entertain kids, to give you a chance to take a little break and do something. We're going to talk about some pavilions that desperately need fleshing out, especially in the middle of World Showcase. And we'll get to them. But right now, we are getting to what I think is undisputedly the best pavilion in World Showcase now, and that is the France Pavilion. The France Pavilion has everything. It has a fancy restaurant. It has a mid-tier restaurant. It has a patisserie. It has an ice cream shop. That's just the food. Then it has Impressions de France in the morning, and then after that, they do the Beauty and the Beast sing-along. I hope they never get rid of Impressions de France because I absolutely adore this movie. I will specifically find time to go and sit and watch Impressions de France, and it makes me want to go to France so badly. Like, when I watch this movie, I am like, I got to get to France now. So it has those two things, and then it has a ride now. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is in the back. It was perfect where they decided to put this because it doesn't ruin the guest flow in the rest of the France Pavilion. Everybody goes around the side, and then it's almost like a second pavilion down there. you have Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, you have the crepe shop, you have a crepe window, and all of that is to the back, doesn't take away from the rest of the pavilion, and it puts this, I don't know if I'd call it an e-ticket ride, but it takes this major ride that eats people, takes them out of World Showcase for a little bit. It has a long line. They ride an attraction based on a super popular movie. Kids are going to love it. They need more things in World Showcase for kids, and that is definitely one of them. A+ addition by Disney adding this ride to the France Pavilion.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to ride it yet because I haven't been there since it's reopened, but just seeing where it is, it really is. It is like a prime location within the pavilion because it isn't just front and center and is going to clog up everything. I have a few friends who've been since, and they just loved it. They thought that ride was so much fun. I'm glad that they did put that in there. Wait, did the crepe shop come with Remy as well? Or was that, because I don't remember there being a crepe shop.
The crepe shop in the back is with the whole Remy's Ratatouille Adventure section. It really fleshed out this pavilion and took one of my favorite pavilions already and made it definitely my favorite pavilion. And one of the things they have done to make World Showcase more kid-friendly over the past few years is they've added more and more meet and greets. World Showcase is a great place to meet princesses because they are scattered throughout World Showcase. At the France Pavilion, you can meet both Aurora and Belle. These are great meet and greets. It's Belle in her peasant blouse or whatever, the blue dress. It is Aurora in her bright pink dress.
Oh.
And I know both of those are very, very popular. You always see little girls in their Belle outfits getting ready to meet Belle, in their Aurora outfits ready to meet Aurora. It is really cute. It's really nice. I think the meet and greets are a really good addition to World Showcase. I think they might even want to look into adding some more. I think when we talk about the Canada Pavilion, I think they need to have Mei Lin Lee from Turning Red, but as the panda. They have introduced that character at Shanghai Disneyland, so I think you've already made the costume. So let's get that in the Canada Pavilion and add another reason to go to the Canada Pavilion.
I think that's a really good idea. I want it to be a meet and greet with her as her panda, but I also want her friends to be there because they would make it that much better to have her three friends hanging out, kind of like in the movie, now they're just they're trying to raise their tickets to Four Town. So they're trying to get everyone to come take pictures with her. It would be hilarious.
But we were talking about the France Pavilion, and now we are going to move on to the Morocco Pavilion. But before we do Morocco, in between France and Morocco is a space that usually is reserved for one of the best booths at whatever Epcot festival happens to be occurring that week. I know this is where they have L'Chaim during Festival of the Holidays. That is a very popular food booth. During Flower and Garden, which is happening right now, that's where you can get the coconut tres leches, which is really popular. While it is not a permanent fixture in World Showcase because it always rotates, I will say that this is usually a good food booth. Because there's a little bit of space in between France and Morocco, it can accommodate some longer lines so they can have some more popular items. Now we are going to move to Morocco, which if you would have asked me a few years ago to rank my favorite pavilions, this would have been number 1 or number 2. Now it's probably number 9 or number 10. They have destroyed the Morocco Pavilion. Since the Moroccan government is no longer sort of in control of this pavilion, Disney has just let it almost fall apart.
Yeah, it's super disappointing because when I went to Epcot for the first time ever as a kid, the one World Showcase pavilion that stood out in my mind up until I went to visit it again, however many years later, was Morocco. I'm thankful that I haven't actually seen it in person since, because it's so disappointing. It was such a cool pavilion, and it's so good. It's so good. And now it's just, yeah, it makes me really sad.
So we're not talking a lot about the restaurants, but Restaurant Marrakesh still has not reopened since the pandemic closure. They have turned Tangerine Cafe, which used to be a really great quick service location, into a permanent festival booth. Now, it is always a good festival booth, but I like just having this be a solid quick service location. There is Spice Road Table, which I've heard people say they don't like most of the food there. However, the hummus fries are some of the best things that you will get in all of Walt Disney World. If you're going to just sit down, get some hummus fries to sort of soak up some of the alcohol as you're drinking around the world, that is a good place to stop and get something really, really good. Trust me on the hummus fries. I don't even know if the Jasmine meet and greet is officially back here yet. I know I've seen Jasmine at this pavilion since it reopened from the pandemic, but I haven't seen her in her normal meet and greet location there. There's a little museum, which is kind of interesting, but they rotate what shows at the museum, and sometimes it can be more interesting than other times. Besides that, the Fez Room is a nice place to sit, get off your feet. It is very beautiful. One of the things that I like about the Fez Room is if you look at the tiles, you will notice that the tiles are not perfect, that there are some chips, that there are some missing tiles, there are some miscolored tiles. And the reason that they do that is because in the Moroccan tradition, nobody is perfect, only God. So they intentionally put some of these imperfections in there. That is some incredible theming, and it actually gives you a look into Moroccan culture. The Fez Room is relaxing. It's beautiful. It's a great place to take pictures. It is also a place with a very, very nice hidden outlet where you can charge your phone when you're almost halfway through World Showcase. You can get a drink, you can get a snack, you can sit there, charge your phone a little bit, because you know my Disney experience is sapping your phone of juice. You're taking all these pictures, you're taking all your videos for Instagram and TikTok. Getting that opportunity to charge your phone and sit on a bench in a nice, cool location is definitely important almost halfway through World Showcase. But besides that, the Morocco Pavilion has become an incredible disappointment, as Sarah just mentioned. It was one of my favorite pavilions. It's beautiful. You can take a lot of great pictures there, but that's basically it now.
Yeah, it's like basically a DIY photo stop. There's nobody to take your picture for you, so you got to do it yourself.
As we continue our counterclockwise journey, we are now heading to the Japan Pavilion. This is a favorite of a lot of people. It's not necessarily one of my favorites, but there is so much to see and do here. People love the Mitsukoshi department store.
Yes.
This is a very popular department store in Japan, and they have one in the Japan Pavilion. You can get Hello Kitty stuff. You can still get some Nintendo stuff. I don't know when Epic Universe opens over at Universal, if that'll still be the case. But this is a really, really cool store. Have you and your family spent time in it when you've been in World Showcase?
We have not a ton of time, because it seems like anytime we go, Japan in the pavilion is packed. Like, it is always incredibly busy. So we try and do a quick spin through just to like take a look at everything. But we haven't at least from our last trip, we didn't spend an excessive amount of time there. We just kind of looked around just because we wanted to get out of the throng of people. But it is such a cool pavilion. And next time I go, I definitely want to spend more time exploring it, because I've seen on TikTok, which I did not realize, they have an experience there that I actually got to do in Hawaii, where you can pick an oyster and they'll culture a pearl for you out of it, which is super fun. And I have a ring and a necklace that I got, and I actually got my mom a necklace as well when we did it in Hawaii. And I want to go see that in Epcot as well, because that is super cool. And I think it's the same company that we worked with that does it in Epcot as well, which is really cool.
And then in the back, they have a museum, which can be really, really interesting. I know the current exhibit is based on some of those anime, Hello Kitty, some of those, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but those cute cartoon characters that they have been producing in Japan ever since post-World War II. And one of the things that I found interesting is that World War II played a huge part in the creation of characters like Hello Kitty, because Japan was in a situation where they didn't want to look threatening. So they decided to make all of their pop culture very, very non-threatening for a while. And boy, did they pick up a lot of teenage girls at Hot Topic by going with that particular theory.
In Hawaii, they call it kawaii, but kawaii, the cute culture of Japan, that's what it's called. The what you're talking about, the like really cutesy art and stuff is kawaii. And I'm actually reading right now, it says kawaii means cute or lovable and represents an obsession with all things darling.
That is so the cute. Best description ever. They did a much, much better job than I was doing trying to describe it.
That's on the Disney World website. That's so cute. I love it. I want to go look at that. I never knew that was back there. Otherwise, I would have been spending so much time in there.
And then another thing I really love about the Japan Pavilion is by Katsura Grill, which is the quick service location there. In the back, where people sit after they've gotten their Katsura Grill food, is a beautiful garden. There are koi fish there. There are those paper lanterns hanging all over the place. It is just gorgeous. This was one of my favorite places when the parks first reopened from the pandemic closure, because I would sit here for 20 minutes and not see a single other person. You can't do that anymore, but it's still usually pretty laid back in this location, and you can sit here and kind of recharge. This spot also gives you great views of the pagoda. That pagoda is so iconic as almost the Disney weenie of the Japan Pavilion that draws people towards the Japan Pavilion. But at that pagoda, it also serves as a stage for something really, really cool.
Yeah, please don't kill me if I say this wrong, but the Matsuriza, the drummers, it's a show of traditional Japanese taiko drummers, which is really cool. And they actually have it's not a spontaneous show from what I've heard. They actually have scheduled time, so you can pick a time to go and watch these, which is really awesome.
And I know they have scheduled times, and you can usually find it out either by checking the app or asking a cast member. But I've found that I usually just kind of stumble upon this as I am walking around World Showcase. And when I just see it happening, I'll be walking past Morocco. All of a sudden, I'll hear those drums going. And it's something that always gives me that, oh yeah, I'm at Walt Disney World feeling. Like that wonder and that awe, like it really does set the tone and make you feel like you're experiencing another culture. You're seeing something very interesting, very cool. I am always so impressed by these women and the stamina that it takes to do this. Yes. Because this isn't easy. These aren't like little drumsticks. They are banging some huge drums with huge sticks, and it must take, like, they all have guns.
Yeah, it's like literally full body drumming. They have to use like their entire core and upper body, and like, yeah, it's intense, but it is so cool.
Those women are definitely fit, and it is so fun to watch it. And it's one of those things that harkens back to the old Epcot, to the original purpose of Epcot, showing other cultures, but also giving you something that you don't have to sit and watch the entire show. There's not a plot. You watch it for a little bit, you admire how much practice it takes to do this, how much culture is involved, and then you continue to move on through World Showcase. So it's just something nice to entertain you, because World Showcase isn't supposed to be like Magic Kingdom, where you rush to this ride, you rush to this show, you rush to this restaurant, you're making your ADR. This is supposed to be the park where you kind of take your time and just sort of let the atmosphere soak in as you move around the world. And this is the perfect experience for that. And Sarah, we are now at the halfway point of Epcot's World Showcase, and that might be a great spot to stop, and then we will resume with the next half of World Showcase in a future episode. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to continue our journey around the world.
We've just scratched the surface on our discussion of Epcot's World Showcase. Sarah Says we'll be back in a few weeks to start talking about the United States through Mexico. This has been episode 115 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We will return next week with my other close friend, Sarah. This time, the Sarah Enigma will be finishing the topic we began in episode 113 at the end of March. The two of us will talk about attractions at Magic Kingdom with traditionally shorter wait times and whether they are worth those waits. That will be next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.